Hey guys, this is Eric Weingarten with Weingarten Racing. Today's video's got a lot of voiceovers because I don't have the engine here anymore, so I'll go and warn you of that firsthand. This video is about low-end torque. Do you really need it? So this was actually a great example, so I'm picking this engine. Do you guys remember this engine? This was the 406 small block Chevy. And this title of this video was 406 Humbles Me on the Dyno, or the Dyno Humbles Me. I can't remember exact one. I've done so many different videos, but that's what it was it humbled me. So this is the engine, and this is what it did on the dyno.
It increased the power all the way across the board.
Now, when you watch that, you're saying, man, that makes a lot of power. It did. It made almost 700 horsepower according to the dyno. But did you see the torque? It sucked. It was about 500 foot-pounds. Now, here's why it sucked. I had this customer's named Cecil. He had bought this engine from me, and this is the Engine Master engine from 2011. So it was an Engine Masters formed initially, which, for those that don't know, we typically have really tight lobe separations. This was a 104 650 lift because that was the rules back then. Had a whole bunch of epoxy in the manifold. This thing was on point. And when I did all that, it made this power. Well, as you can tell, it made a ton of torque before, and maybe it's slightly less horsepower, so about 30 less horsepower and like 100 and something foot-pounds of torque less. So seems like this thing is going to be a turd. Now, this engine is going in Cecil's truck, which weighs like 3,800 pounds, and completely stock suspension, as in only thing he's really changed on the suspension is some 90-10 front shocks. Other than that, it's completely stock. Puts it in the truck, and I'm telling him, man, I'm sorry. I think I let you down on this deal. I can't explain it, and goes out and runs 0.3 faster and 3 miles an hour faster than it ever gone. Now, if you looked at that, you're like, there's no way from the torque lost you would ever have gone that fast. I'd say, yeah, you're right. But I also didn't trust the dyno. So it seemed like something was wrong. So he'd raced all last year, and then he called me up and said, hey, man, why don't we try some methanol on this? And can you order me a methanol carburetor, and we'll give it a shot and see if we can't go a little bit faster? And he wanted to re-dyno it before that, but we took it to Dunsworth Dyno. Now, Dunsworth Dyno is in Enid, and that's where I do all my dyno mill testing. But I had tested this Engine Master engine in 2011 on his dyno, so it actually been on 2 different dynos. So I have the initial numbers, which I'll get to show you in a second how it compares with this. So let's just take a quick peek at that video that we just got done doing. Because we tested on gas first, exactly the way it was on the other one, and then we switched over to methanol. So here's the power numbers on gas. Just to recap, this is 11.5 to 1. The camshaft duration is 244, and I can't remember the exhaust. And then the lobe separation is 108, the 750 lift. and then like six something, like 680 on exhaust. Not that it really matters, besides to say the camshaft itself, as far as what it was before, the lift gained a tenth, and the duration on the intake gained 2 degrees. The exhaust duration gained, I think, almost 8. So quite a bit on that side. And then the lobe separation went to 108. In all fairness, I kind of blew it on this camshaft. The intake duration, perfect. I probably could kick down the exhaust a little bit more, but the reason why I added more exhaust, it would carry the power. The 108 thing was mostly to keep it easier on stuff, because the piston and valve clearance was pretty tight. So I was like, just get a little bit more. I probably should have just split the hairs and done a 106. But that's, lessons learned there, but whatever. Anyway, there you go for the power numbers. You see them right there. Now that's on gas. And truthfully, honestly, you're looking at that right away. You should be saying, you need to take some jet out, probably make a little bit more power. And you're absolutely correct. But he was only going to be on gas for a little bit, and we're going to switch to methanol. So that's what power it made right there. But really, how did it compare to what it did before in the Engine Masters form? Here's the overlay. Now, the red line is from before. This is from whenever it was tested for the Engine Master Challenge in 2011. So, again, different camshaft. Also, the intake's different, which I really should point this out. I changed this intake because the one that had it in before had epoxy in it, and there were signs that some of it, but not very much, it started to come out, but nothing really major to hurt the engine or nothing. But since we're going on to methanol, there was no purpose in having that intake on, because the methanol would just eat away the epoxy. This intake manifold is larger dramatically. So just from the dyno mule testing, I would say, it probably did cost some power there. Well, not so much power, definitely on the torque side. But the biggest loss was the camshaft. But now look at those two lines. You're saying to yourself, which one do you think's faster in this 3,800-pound 71 C10 pickup? If you're thinking it's the red line, you're wrong. It was the other one. And it only beats it for a very little part of the upper range. So then immediately people are thinking, wait a minute, this guy's probably turning a whole lot of RPMs. No, he actually went faster, shifting at 6,200 RPM. Which is weird, because it doesn't look like it makes any more power there, but it was faster. This is also one of those times where the dyno can lead you the wrong way. That one was faster. It did kind of stump me a little bit, but he has also shifted at 6,500 RPM, and it was still faster than what it was before too. So if you look at the power difference, it was only about 15 more peak power. Torque, it's less by about 10. So pretty much it traded. Gained 10 horsepower, lost about 10 foot-pounds of torque, gained 0.3 and went 3 mile an hour faster. Kind of one of those weird things where like, no way. And, well, way. If you think that's strange, wait till you hear this one.
Shut it right off for you. It might be too soon, didn't have much of a run, but
Here are the numbers on methanol. So Mark Whitener, he built this methanol, 1,000 CFM methanol carburetor. We were in a 950 quick fuel before. Now it looks strange because you're like, what are those bowls? There's no way he'd have put that on there. Yeah, he didn't. He actually had these nice cool billet bowls. You know what the problem was when we went to dyno? I forgot that the bowls take the special fittings that have an O-ring. And Gary didn't have any O-ring fittings, and neither did I. But we did have a Demon carburetor there. So after switching over the accelerator pumps and the needle and seat, threw everything else back on just to make some pulls. And because we didn't have any fuel fittings. So that's what it looks strange. That's not the way it came. It's got billet bowls back on it now. We just didn't have the fittings. But anyway, it gained like 20 horsepower, which you're like, that's not that much. But look, it gained a ton of torque everywhere. So if you look at the overlay, and I know it's not the best picture, but there's a line at the bottom, that's the gas. And all the lines at the top are testing with methanol, just changing jets, tried different timing because people think that's the ticket too. Here's the clue. You know how much how much more power it made going from 36 to 38? Because that 36 was the best on gas. Next to nothing. I think it was like 5. It's not worth it. Tried, by the way, going up, nothing, worth 0. So anyway, tried timing. That's what those other lines are. So it makes all this more torque. And you want to know what? It was slower at the track. He just reported to me yesterday that it went slower. And so you would think, well, oh my gosh, how is that possible? You make all this torque and horsepower. How do you go slower? I thought the same thing. Well, here's one of the disadvantages of torque. Everybody loves that torque thing. If you can't hook it up, you ain't going faster. And you want to guess what happened? His stock suspension found the limits on how much torque it actually take was bouncing. Although he still ran a 151 60-foot time, which isn't bad, but he's gone just as fast on the gas. The rest of his time slowed down, and he ran out of fuel. So what I mean by that is his fuel lines weren't enough to support the methanol, so he's got to make some changes and stuff. But just because you have more torque doesn't mean you go faster. It should. So eventually he will go faster because it's not torque down low, it's torque everywhere. So in his case, having that more torque where he was running at the higher RPMs, he goes faster. So there's a little bit more information about torque. Now you can actually hear me rant. Okay, this is the part of the video where I get to make a whole lot of people upset. There are 2 myths that I keep hearing spouted over and over and over again. Myth 1 is you don't need to have ported heads with your turbo. You can just turn it up with boost. That's one, but that's not in this video. The other one's this one. You got to have low speed torque to make that thing go faster. You got to have it down low, got to have that torque, or otherwise it ain't going anywhere. That one's probably the one that gets spread the most, and it's incorrect in so many ways. Because several people started this whenever they would look at my dyno mule graphs, and they said, how come you never started the pull at 3,000 RPM? Why'd you always start them here? We need to see this data. This data is very important for us. You know, I need to know this stuff. So I'm going to address all that. This is Cecil's. So Cecil left at 1,500 RPM on a foot brake, which would be way down here. Okay? If you were in your car, you would understand this too. The minute you let off the brake, it goes through these RPMs really quick. It usually goes through the lower RPMs very quickly, and then it gets to a certain point where it doesn't gain as many RPMs as quickly. That is where you want your peak torque, not here. Because the real thing is, how much torque do you really think it needs to make this vehicle go, say, 60 miles an hour? Because about 60 miles an hour in most cars without overdrive, you're about 3,000 RPM, maybe 65. You don't need a lot of torque. Very little, actually. So 477 foot-pounds of torque right here, that's great and all, but doesn't need it to go 60, which is about 3,500 in your car. Don't really need it. They're like, well, no, it's still going to make you accelerate faster. That's going to get you to take off. It's going to get you to here faster. You're going to accelerate because of the mechanical advantage, and it takes far less torque to get going in the slower speeds than it does the higher speeds of the car. So this part of the graph to me is usually the most pointless one. And I've said that before. I'm like, how come you don't pull down at below 3,000 RPM? Because this part's pointless. You will accelerate so quickly through this that it won't matter. This part's the important part. So usually you could say about 4,400 to 6,500 in your, or 7,000 in your street vehicle, or not street vehicle, strip vehicle. Some of you are like, that's race motor stuff. I don't care. Let's say you shift at 6,000. Go about here. You still get 4,000. That range right there is important. You're like, no, you need it at 2,500. It's going to skip right through those. Just fool your car. Just do it now. Well, if you're safe, just do it. And then, because if you did it, this one deals with the next one. I need this torque down here. No, you don't. Go ahead and get in your tow vehicle, pull up your load, and floor it. What's it do? It downshifts and goes right to here, doesn't it? And that's why does it do that? Because it wants to get you to the peak torque. Why would I want to be at 477 when I could be at 570? And I'm hitting it more often. This is boom, 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 boom. So many harder hits than boom, boom, boom. That's why we downshift. But let's pretend, because I used to have an 83 Chevy Silverado, had a turbo 350, 308 rear gear, and I pulled with it. Even when I'd floor it, it would accelerate at least 500 RPM easily and then start carrying. Which brings up the next point. This part of the graph's worthless because of this. This is on an engine dyno. The way an engine dyno works, we go wide open throttle. That's 100% everything you got, wide open, and the water brake on the dyno will actually grab and drag that engine down from whatever you think it is to here. No vehicle can do that. No vehicle can be in the same situation as what this engine dyno is going to do. The reason why we even did it for this is because in the Engine Master competition, they said, hey, well, let's make it 3,000, 7,000. Why? Because their readers were still of the thought that you need to make more low-end torque, and that's the way to do it. This right here, it actually gives you false data. And why is it false data? Because you are not going to be wide open throttle at 3,000 RPM under full load. It just isn't going to happen. You're going to start accelerating so much quicker. There's only two ways, and that could happen. Do you have a boat? Boats, absolutely, you got it. Because you can set your props, and that's all it's going to move, period. Or an airboat. Those are it. A vehicle, no. It's just not going to happen. So if you really wanted to demonstrate what it would be like towing something and how easy or how hard it would be, you wouldn't be doing it at wide open throttle. You'd be doing it with maybe 40% open or 30% open in your throttle and then doing a pull from that point on. Not 100%. Because if you're 100%, it's going to go through it. You're never going to be under full load drag down to something unless you're climbing, say, even the I-Continent. That was a great example if you ever watched that, which I don't know if they even do it anymore. But I think it was TFL trucks or something. They would take the new trucks and get them under their max load capacity, take them up this really steep incline. They would be underneath wide open throttle, but guess what? They would never, and this is stock vehicles, they would not be at 3,000 RPM. They'd be like 4,500 still. That would be full open, wide open load. You are still not at 3,000 or lower. So hopefully, I didn't lose subscribers with that, but I wanted to try to stop that myth from being spread. This does not make you faster at the racetrack. That does. Even if you're like, no, I only do 6,000. Okay, that does. That doesn't. It just doesn't. And matter of fact, if you focus more of your time on this part right here, you will slow. So what you're doing is you trade. You can trade this torque for that torque, but you gave up peak. So I cannot begin to tell you the number of people that I know personally that had Vortec heads and they were running that RPM air gap, switched over on the Victor Jr. Around town, it didn't feel as strong. It went faster at the track because it was in the range they were running. Now, I will say it felt faster here, but so their butt felt faster, but the track told them the truth. So anyway, hopefully you guys got something out of this video and some other thoughts for it. And I didn't even mention this part. Let's just do this real quick too. How much torque do you think a street tire on a street will actually take? Several of you are like, I need 600 foot-pounds of torque. What tire you got? I got a 275 BF Goodwrench on the back. And you're driving in Oklahoma roads, you're never hooking that up. You're just frying them. You don't need that torque. I need it. You could be doing 90 and punch it and you spin your tire right. Sure do, got all that power. And you don't need the torque because you ain't hooking it up. You got more torque than that road can even take. Like if you're strictly a street vehicle, realize that tire and that road is only going to hold so much. Just saying. So just a thought. And circle track guys, you guys should appreciate this, which I haven't even got to you because it feels like I kind of ignored you because we're talking about drag strap stuff. Circle track, you do need a torque to accelerate out, but still even that, you're not really caring about this. You might a little bit here, but really from here on. You might be over a broader range than a drag race guys. Like we might be focused on 2,000. Yours might be focused on 3,000 RPM, but you for sure aren't down here. You ain't worried about 2,500 RPM leave. So you just aren't. But anyway, I feel like I left you guys out, but I didn't want you to think I didn't care about you. But Hopefully you guys are the prime example too, though. You guys give a perfect example. How many of you guys on the circle track have seen cars go faster because they made less power because they actually got it to hook up and just went around the track? When cars that had way more power than you did, way more torque, couldn't get it to hook up. So there are things about torque. Still got to hook it up. So anyway, longer rant. Hopefully I got some evidence with this to share with you guys. Remember, I'm no Superman. Please don't unsubscribe me for this. Although I really don't get paid for the subscribers. But I'll take whatever I can get. Oh, by the way, my books are still for sale. You know, I gotta pay for some more dyno stuff. These are $38 on my website, the Weingartner Racing Dyno Mule books. All the dyno graphs. This isn't in there. But anyway, you guys, remember, I'm no Superman. Take care.